Wonderful. I guess we are officially live. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Women in Leadership panel for Salt Flats 2021. My name is Courtney Nickerson. I'm the board secretary for the Alberta Esports Association, and I'm also the moderator for today's panel. A quick note before we begin, though, this panel is about each of our personal journeys into the gaming and into the leadership space. As these are unique experiences, we may disagree or give differing opinions and advice. We encourage discussion, but at no point should the validity of these experiences come into question, nor should any member of this panel feel uncomfortable for opening up. With that said, we will be discussing how we got where we are, what challenges we believe still exist for women in the space, and we'll be ending the panel with an open Q&A period as long as time permits. So I guess first question, can each person please give me an introduction of themselves, starting with Kagan?
Sure. So I am the Senior Market Manager for TELUS covering esports. So my portfolio is really about community and partner development in this space, with telecoms slowly kind of getting on board to the esports and video gaming side. This is actually quite new for us. It's been quite a fun journey. Personally, I've been a video game fan since I could pick up a controller, and I really believe that it's a great way to bring families together, not just people across the globe. So.
Wonderful. Madison.
So I'm Madison. I work at the Edmonton Screen Industries office. So for those who don't know, that kind of deals with film, television, XR, VR, AR, and video games. So we get to do some really cool things working as a nonprofit. I'm the communications and outreach officer. So obviously I get to do fun events, things like that, as well as deal with some fun sponsorship things. For me, this March will actually be my 11th year of being a streamer personally. So I've been doing that for a little while, but no, it's a pretty new thing with me joining the ESIO team back in September. So just getting used to things still and getting running. So we're really excited to be here today.
Wonderful, thank you. Bex.
Hey, some of you in the Edmonton community probably know me. My name's I guess Rebecca DeVoe. Mostly Bex is what everyone calls me. I am the Edmonton Community Meetup powered by Twitch manager. I have been for the last 3 years now, I think, as well as the founder of Alberta Streams for the Wishes, which is the only multi-city digital fundraiser for Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Wonderful. Yeah. And then, my name is Courtney. Like I mentioned before, I am the executive administrator and board secretary for the Alberta Esports Association. My job is to help coordinate to make sure that the back end runs in the company. But I've done a bunch of really cool things. I kind of have helped build that infrastructure and continue to. And my big job is just supporting all of the cool faces you have already seen today. So with that, I mean, what got you guys interested in working in gaming and entertainment outside of just enjoying gaming and entertainment? Madison?
Sure. So mine kind of came along at the right point. I've been working in marketing communications for too long. Probably about the last decade. Normally in experiential marketing, so a lot of trade shows, a lot of fun stuff. I have worked for Nintendo, so you probably it was capital X back in the day. That's how dating myself I am. Maybe came and saw me there. I also used to work for Microsoft, so we actually launched the Xbox One. So if you were at the West End Best Buy at 1 a.m. back in the day when it was the same weather it is now, you may have gotten to see me do a little dance back then. But it was one of those things where I wasn't quite sure how I fit in, being a marketing communications person. A lot of games, they didn't really have like a place that I felt was for me. I'm not a developer and I'm never going to be, and all the power to those people. The people that I get to work with are so incredibly talented, and now I just get to tell their stories. And for me, that's always been much more interesting, and finding programs that we can actually help them has been really, really great. And finding an organization like the SIO where we get to provide grants and actual monetary support for people who are trying to do these things was kind of like a dream come true because I love supporting indie devs. I love supporting anybody who's doing anything. We also did the Gamers for Groceries event last year, and that was fantastic to see AAA come out and support the cities that they're in. So for me, what kind of got me interested in was obviously being a gamer. My original answer to this was just Mario 3. Because it was an addiction to say the least. And yeah, now I just actually get to help people, and that has been a big thing for me. So kind of came along at the right time, that's for sure.
Bex, Kagan, do either of you have anything to add on to that or bring into your own experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think my path into games was a little bit strange for a lot of people because it wasn't like I went from already being in games into a different area, or even really content creation at all. I started on the gaming sphere just because I wanted to hang out with one of my friends who their goal was to do more streaming. So I offered to, in order to spend more time with them, start showing up on their stream. And I did that every week for the better part of 6 months before I launched my own stream, and which has now blossomed into my career that I have with not only being a community manager for Twitch, but also speaking engagements that I've gotten to do over the years, influencer relations, company relations for content creators, and how to formulate those relationships to build sponsorships and build relationships that end up benefiting them as well as the community. I think that the big thing a lot of people don't realize when they want to get into games, and the thing maybe that a lot of women feel might be difficult for them, is that it does sometimes feel like a boys' club, and it certainly has felt like that at different times in my career. Different travel that I've done to go to events that's pretty much all guys there. But there's always someone else like me who's in there already, who's looking for another one of us to lift up and bring along for the ride with us, because it's a lot of fun.
That is really well said. Madison, I was going to say, when I was thinking about the answer to that, mine was very similar. Mine was, I worked at Best Buy during the Halo 4 launch. And I just remember how cool that was. It was my first midnight launch, and I even lied about my age to make sure that I could work it. I think I was only about 16 at the time. Lied just to work that, and that's what got me into gaming as well, where it's just like seeing what people can create, the events that people can create around gaming. That's so cool. Yeah,
it was the event side that kind of drove me into this as well. I got really lucky when I joined TELUS as an experiential marketer. So I was out doing the same thing, trade shows and all of that. And I just saw that there was a passion there, and really listened to the employees that were saying this is where we should be headed. So they allowed me to take it and run with it.
That is so cool. So I guess another question is like, what was your progression into leadership? Like how were you able to become a leader in this space? Bex?
Oh, yeah, I can start. So for me, I started as somebody who was just a member of the community, and I'm the kind of personality that if you meet me once, you've met me 100 times, I feel like, and probably a lot of people who know me well know that that's kind of the way that I treat everyone. So for me, I saw an opportunity where the person who previously was running Edmonton Community Meetup, back when it was actually called Edmonton Twitch, when we were only a Twitch community before we breached out into, when Mixer was with us, RIP Mixer, Facebook gaming and YouTube as well. That person needed help, so I offered my help, and then eventually it turned into me taking over. And then from there, I think that the title is one thing, but your leadership comes into play when the people around you respect you and see the work that you're doing and want to be a part of that team and want to be a part of what you're looking to do. So once the title was mine, that was one thing, but I spent a long time working hard to make sure that every single person who came on that team had a voice and felt valued. And I think that's why I've gotten to stay for so long. I think that when it comes to leadership, and especially with women, a lot of the times, and myself included, sometimes I feel a little nervous to raise my voice and speak up and say, like, this isn't what I want, like, this is unacceptable, because I don't want to come off as being rude or catty or jealous or whatever that might be. But I've learned definitely in that time period that where your leadership comes into play is how you're able to navigate those differing opinions and how you're able to mitigate the challenges that come with being in a role where sometimes you have to tell people things that they don't want to hear.
That is really, really nice answer. Thank you. Kagan, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I guess for me, I don't really feel like I'm a leader in the space yet. I'm hopefully growing into that. But I've just been really loud for the last 3 years. I've been incredibly loud and proud about inclusivity and diversity and screaming it from every single rooftop I've had the chance to. And I think that that's kind of what's allowed me to grow into a position where I have an ability to make a change, but I still have a lot to learn, and I get to learn it from panels like this with women like you. So it's a wonderful journey. Yeah, I guess that's really how I feel about it right now.
Madison, I mean, you've been in the streaming community for like a decade.
Too long.
Too long. I don't know if I want to say the exact number, but very long. So how do you feel like you've grown into this space?
I mean, when I started out, a lot of people didn't know what it was. We would be on Justin TV if things were different, right? The site that I was actually a part of had like a rivalry with Justin TV, so we used to make fun of each other because we were all in university and very young and didn't really know what we were doing. I remember one time capturing my screen and playing a video game on stream, and people were like, "Why would I want to watch this? I just want to see you talk." And that was very different because obviously Twitch took over. People want to watch people play video games more than people talk, but also just chatting has exploded. And I think there's always been that desire to watch somebody and feel connected. And for me, like, I did take a significant amount of time off. I haven't been like full time that whole time. It definitely was something that I was like, this was kind of a persona that I had on this other site, because back then you didn't tell anybody what your name was, that's for sure, or you were going to get a lot of harassment. I mean, I still did, but it was a lot easier when they don't know where you live. Now it's like, "Hi, I'm Madison. I live in Edmonton," and that's so different than it used to be. I didn't actually used to ever tell people my name at all, and people would get very upset about that. And it was not something that was a thing at the time. And some people definitely got more comfortable with it. Some people fell out of it. For me, when I came back to streaming, I had a weird kind of idea to only focus on streaming games made in Edmonton. And it was part to do with the pandemic. I had been streaming on and off pretty irregularly, but I can't eat at every restaurant. I can't go to every place. So I started Get Gaming YG, Get for a Glass Eye Tiger. So it's a whole thing, right? You got to make the cheesy puns where you can, for sure, or throw in the alliteration wherever possible. Mm-hmm. But for me, that kind of led to this weird side that I've never dealt with, which was the developer side, and seeing how much they wanted people to like see their games. And I didn't realize how much like South by Southwest or PAX or things like that actually affected their business. And me just acknowledging that their game existed and that it came out of Edmonton was huge for them. So for me, I've seen over the last year just how much that's actually helped people get their word out there. There's people who I never would have met who are now like very good friends just because their games are amazing. And being able to see the things that come out of the city you're in, the province you're in, even the country that you're in is just such a fun experience. And I always go into, because obviously we all stream, so we have American friends on there, and I'm like, oh, this game was made in Edmonton, you know that, right? And they're like, I had no idea. But it's a fun game. So that's kind of what I've been doing lately, and that kind of gave me the clout when I walked into my new job, because I was already doing game streams that people were like, oh, maybe she does know a little bit about what she's talking about. I will admit, like, I have fumbled. I have said the wrong thing when it comes to talking about Unity. I think I called it a platform rather than an engine. Like, you just get tongue tied sometimes and things fall out of your mouth. But for me, I think that kind of gave people the like, oh, so she does understand what a video game is and how it's made and all the other things that go with it, rather than just like she has played a video game. So for me, that developer side of things has just increased my understanding of the gaming industry so much, and everybody who's let me pick their brain has been so helpful there.
Well, and I think that leads into the next question really well, which is what are any barriers or challenges you faced while becoming a leader in your field? And at least for myself, I found that demanding legitimacy in the space was one of the most difficult things, and being like, hey, I do actually know what I'm doing. I do actually understand what's happening. I understand this game development process. Like, I have played a video game, yes, but that's not all that there is to me. And I belong in the space because I care about it and because I'm good enough to be here. And I find that that's definitely, at least on my end, it felt like I had to, I had to go above and beyond what, let's say, a man coming from the same background would have to do to prove that they want to be there and that they deserve to be there. I don't know.
100%. I was actually just telling my partner about this yesterday, because we were talking about how you have to not just be good as a woman in esports, especially. You have to be amazing. And I was like, even in university, we were all playing Mario Kart, and they could not accept that I had beaten them at Mario Kart. So I had to beat them as every single character in the game. It took like 4 hours. And then finally they were like, I guess she's kind of good at this. Like it's the silly little things like that they can't just accept, like, oh no, you're not just a Toad main and a one trick Toad, which you should always play Toad. Toad's great. But that you might actually be good at the game. And it's strange because I get more pushback from everyday gamers than I do from like GMs of actual video game studios. And I think that's a really, really interesting shift in the ecosystem, has been at the like corporate level. There have been changes, and I've been able to see that. I mean, obviously there's still a long way to go, a huge amount of way to go, but people at that level have never really questioned me about if I care about video games. It's more the everyday kind of person who's just like, but do you really? And do you know how to maximize this item? And did you change your runes and masteries now that League is totally different? And things like that. And it's been very interesting, especially when I've been having meetings about esports lately, and I am the only one who's ever actually watched a competitive game. And I'm like, yeah, no, I went to the Air Canada Centre to watch the League of Legends finals when they were here. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because I actually like this stuff. It's a thing. So it is a very weird dynamic that corporate is kind of coming along more than the everyday gamer that I've seen, but that may just be me.
And I think that leads into like, because we get questioned so much, and like it's happened in almost every space like that women generally try to break into that's male dominated. My other career outside of games is finance, or at least it was up until a couple months ago, and then I transitioned into law. So I just seem to love following where men generally are in power for whatever reason. But I think because we're constantly questioned like that, it really helps in developing some traits where imposter syndrome is like very, very common in women in gaming. And like even myself, like I mean, I've been very fortunate. My career has been fantastic, and I have a lot of people to thank for the things that I've been able to do. But I think it wasn't until like TwitchCon of 2019 when like a total stranger had said to me like, "Oh, like Edmonton, like you guys are one of the big dogs," referencing like our community meetup that we have here. And it was like that moment when I was like, "Oh shit, I actually do know how to do this job." It's not just like me saying to myself over and over in the mirror to convince myself that I can do this. It's like people do recognize the work that you put in. And I think that it's really important if you're going to be an ally to women in the space that when you watch, you know, your coworker, your friend say, "Oh, well, she just won because she's like a one-trick Kirby main and that's all she can figure out." You know what I mean? Like, you need to also have those conversations as like a man in this space and be like, why would you say that? Like, if I had beat you playing Kirby, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So it's challenging, I think, because it happens on all facets of fandom. Like Star Wars fandom is all the same, right? Where you say, "Oh, I love Star Wars." They're like, "Oh, but did you know this one obscure fact that was in a book 16 years ago that you definitely haven't read?" Fake fan. You don't know anything. It's pretty easy if you are watching it happen, I think, outside looking in, to add that voice and say, is this really relevant to the conversation in order to help, you know, build that person up? Because I do think that that is a real struggle that a lot of women have in this space, and it's directly from that, the need for us to have to not just be good, we have to be great, or we have to be fantastic. And then we watch like our peers, our male peers, and it's nothing against them, but to watch them get to just be good enough when you go above and beyond really chaps my butt. It really does. It really makes me annoyed because I've watched a lot of people get praised for doing the bare minimum when, you know, minorities in the space, women, people of color, LGBTQ community have been doing it time and time and time again, but their voices just get steamrolled underneath the noise. So it's really challenging to find time and space to prove the validity of what you're saying, especially if everyone else kind of is aimed at making sure that you don't have the opportunity to do so.
Kagan, do you have any thoughts on like what you think the biggest challenge right now is in the women in gaming space?
I think these lovely ladies hit it right on the nail on the head with it's not at the corporate level, it's at the player level. I think that's where we need to be the loudest and proudest in changing the message about anyone, women, minorities, same as Beck was saying, that it's just that's a space that is still fighting us so hard on our legitimacy in the space.
Yeah, I definitely, like, again, like Madison said, I think from a corporate level, it's starting to get better. I am going to shamelessly call out Brad and Vic, the founders of ASA, for being phenomenal at really pushing the women of ASA forward. And of course, all of the wonderful panelists here have met either or both of them. And they are the ones that insisted on this panel being forward and to have these conversations. And while they're not unique, they are, I think, potentially the minority for doing that, and for being so insistent that like our board of directors is 50% men, 50% women. And I think that was a very distinct and specific choice of theirs. And I really appreciate that, especially for the esports industry here that we are building in Alberta, that they are being so, they're taking so much care of making sure that women have the same space and the same comfort in the space. Because esports in general is pretty intimidating to break into. So like going to your first tournament, surprise, this is my first esports tournament. This is my first ever esports tournament that I am competing in. And it was really intimidating to do it. And it felt even worse as a woman because, as we just mentioned, you can't just be good enough. Like, it feels like I will fail and like I shouldn't be doing this unless I can guarantee I would be top 3 in a game. And so I think that's still probably, I don't know if I'm just speaking for myself, but just that idea of like, I don't want to try unless I know I can succeed, and I know I can succeed really well.
And I think that goes back, like that's the rhetoric we need to change. Is it's okay if you don't win all the games and you're a minority or you're a female. Get out there and just play it. And if we can get those young women doing that, that's what's going to change it. And to your comment about Vic and Brad, they've been absolutely amazing since the very first time I met with Brad a year and a half ago, talking about this exact conversation. So it's good to see that we do have men who are really trying to lead the charge. I've got the same support coming from my company as well. They want us to be loud and proud. So.
Bex, Madison, do you guys have any other challenges that you guys are facing? Big, small?
I mean, yes. For us, like we're a nonprofit in a creative industry, right? It is always hard to find ways to support the typically underrepresented people. Like I would love to do more for obviously for women, for BIPOC, for LGBTQS plus. Like there's so much that we need to do, and as a nonprofit, we've only got so much to go with. And the people who rush to the grant applications are the ones that you would expect, but we've been working really, really hard over the past 6 months to open up the programs a lot more. I mean, for us, we even have the film industry tends to look for the grants a lot more than IDM, interactive digital media. They're a lot more scared, I think. We're confused that people want to give them money, because that's not typically the way that it works in video games. It's normally CMF or nothing. So we're a very unique organization in that we do support video game development and all the things that kind of go with that. We also do free workshops. And so the one that we did just in November was actually with Sam Meggs, who used to work at BioWare here as a writer. And she is a powerhouse of a woman. She's openly bisexual. She absolutely talks about that. She just actually wrote a Star Wars book, and it came out the day that we did the panel, and she was like, my mentions are full of mean things, so if people want to come say nice stuff to me, please tweet at me right now. Yeah. And it's very much a thing that happens still. And she's just a normal, like, white Canadian woman. I can't imagine if she was a woman of color, how different her mentions would look. So that's something that we're really, really trying to work on. And it is a huge barrier of finding funding, of pushing things forward, and being too edgy, right? Because some people see it as like service, that we're just trying to do it just to do it. But for us, we don't want to do anything if we're just doing it. Like I'm not ever going to post the black square on Instagram. The things that we're going to do are going to have long lasting and actual impact. And so for us, I just can't wait to see the next thing that we get to announce, because it's hopefully stuff that our community needs. And when we talk about Brad and Victor, like, obviously huge advocates for everything in this space, and you look up the ASA board, like, you're not just looking at the picture of the same person over and over. It's not just like a whole bunch of white dudes, which is very refreshing to see. But I think it's so important that they're in the conversation. So Brad, being as big of an advocate as he is, has just been absolutely fabulous and helping deal with those barriers quite a lot.
Bex, do you have anything you would like to add as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm speaking, I guess, more from the creator side than anything right now, just because obviously the landscape of what I do is a little bit different right now. But I think that if I could give myself any kind of advice looking into what my future is going to be now, I feel like a lot of women in this space, when they enter the scene, like a young ingenue, they're really concerned about the expiration date, because a lot of the time with women, you'll notice that the older that we get, it seems like the less legitimacy we receive, especially when it comes to creative arts, as well as dealing within the context of like gaming entertainment. And I think that that's a huge thing that we're facing right now with the pandemic, is that the market's now oversaturated with a lot of new people who have kind of started professions in games. And I say professions loosely. It might not necessarily be a traditional career the way that some of us may have. It might be more of the content creation side. But because of that, I have noticed, especially in the creator scope, that a lot of women are feeling kind of that push on when is my expiration date. Now, I'm going to be tipping over towards closer to 30 this year, and I don't see any close date coming for me, hopefully. And I have friends who are much, much older than I who are in this space and are still occupying this space, but it becomes rarer and rarer as women seem to age. I think that that feeling of like needing to fight the clock is something that we need to talk about more and really try to put an axe in that, because I think that with age, we only get more knowledge and we're only going to be better at what we do. It's just, that's the miscommunication. I think the misconception that we currently have is that, you know, once you hit 30, once you hit 35, you better have another career lined up, because you're not going to stay funny. You're not going to stay engaging. You're not going to stay like pretty enough to like continue to create for that long. But if my male counterparts can do it, I most certainly can as well. So
I think that is so important to like talk about how like that's just unwritten but kind of known by every woman. Like it's hard to put it into words, because like of course I'm probably the youngest on the panel. I'm in my early mid-20s. And even for myself, I was like, if I don't get into the space early enough, I can't.
Yeah.
I find that with men, like the men that are in leadership tend to be in their 40s and their 50s. Like they're constantly growing, and they don't seem to have a peak, or if they do have a peak, it is much later, or at least a perceived peak. Whereas with women, it almost seems like if you are 35 and like that's going to be as far as you go, even though you're going to continue in the space for 10, 20, 30 years after that point. And it really is scary to age and to like continue trying to grow in a space and wondering when am I going to peak? Like what is the age that I'm going to peak at?
So it's like an uphill battle on one side to even get to like the climax of like what your career could look like. You're already fighting against, you know, the barriers that are there to try to prove legitimacy in the space. Make sure that you seem knowledgeable enough, be not just good, be great, be fantastic. So you're already, you know, working that railway car up to the top as quickly as you possibly can with as much force as you can, only to hit the top and be like, well, I got crow's feet now. I'm out of here. See you later. Call me never, I guess. So it's like, it's an entirely, I think, different experience than what we see a lot of our male counterparts kind of go through. And especially like, I know, Madison, I know you were very involved in the YouTube community when it was new as well. And I think that we see it a lot on YouTube. It's like, because they are kind of, you know, 10, 20 years ahead of us right now. We get to see what's kind of coming down the pipeline for the games sphere, what's going to happen. There's not very many female creators who are original YouTube who still have careers now. There are a lot of men though. So it's something that even if like I disagree with it and I don't think that it should matter, I think that it's like dumb is the only way I can describe it. And it's the same thing with like actresses, right? Like we see this constantly within media is like once you hit whatever that date might be, suddenly the bookings stop. I think that as women in that space and as advocates, as people who are supporting women in that space, it's really important that if you see signs of that being the next step, that it's a conversation that we do have, just because I think it's the most overlooked part. We can all talk about like, you know, shitty gamer man who have said nasty things to me on the internet. I used to play Magic the Gathering fairly competitively several years ago, and the stuff that was said to me then would make your eyelashes curl. But no one wants to talk about the hard stuff, the stuff that really sucks, which is like, I can work my entire life for something, get it, and then have it taken away from me just because I couldn't afford Botox. So it's like, it's important to have it brought up. And I really wanted to drive it home because I think that unless you hear it from someone who has watched it happen to their friends and their colleagues, it's easy to be like, that doesn't happen anymore. It does. It certainly does. There are people who work in esports right now who are very famous for sportscasting or very famous as being events hosts who quite legitimately, every time they get booked for something new, it's like a weight's lifted off my chest because they've been around for so long that it's like eventually you can watch them approaching that threshold that, like, doesn't exist in a written formality, but exists in the context of the space that we work in.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, I've seen it obviously with age. Starting streaming when I was 20, now getting older than that. But like, I'm fine to be streaming and in my 30s. The things that I've noticed over the years, though, are my fan base, my like even my friends, my everything to do with the streaming industry changed depending on if I was dating someone and how much I weighed. Which to me, I know that to a certain extent, our counterparts do deal with that, especially they have some weird stuff happen too when they announce that they have a partner as well. And I find that one kind of crosses both lines, but it's very weird to have people suddenly not want to watch your content just because you're happy. As well as, you gain some weight. I don't tend to stand up on stream anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but then you stop posting all the selfies and then your Instagram likes go down, so then people stop coming to your stream, and it's a whole cyclical thing with social media, right? Like, there's videos of me at the 789 gathering, the first ever like YouTube gathering, pre-VidCon, and I thought I was a huge, massive person at that. Now I look at it and I'm like, oh, so tiny. When can I do that again?
Little baby, love that.
Exactly. I have like little baby fat cheeks and all stuff like that. And you look at it now and you're just like, even if I was about the same, like, stuff shifts over time, to put it nicely. And I know that kind of changes who is a fan of your content. And there are some people who do not age. They are completely ageless. I've seen photos of them like 15 years ago, and you're like, did you take this yesterday? But for me, I really did notice like a drop in my content as soon as I got involved with someone, or as soon as there were like noticeable changes. So like a little bit more pudge up in the face, because people would start making comments, and then I would get weird comments about like, if she doesn't say anything, she agrees to marry me, even if she's got a boyfriend. Like, I was thinking, because I was reading the chat a little bit, I was about people not feeling safe in the space, and like I said, I've had my fair share of death threats. I'm sure everybody here has, but my favorite one was they threatened to run me over with a 2x4, which is not a car. That is a piece of wood. So that was probably one of my favorite ones, just because we still make fun of it to this day. But, that was a long time ago where I wasn't as easily accessible, and you didn't know where I was at all times. But it changes what you post on the internet. It changes the content you put out. If you don't feel safe, you're gonna post very different things than if you were just very, very comfortable and confident.
Yeah, I literally had to take like a year off after somebody threatened me, because I just like couldn't, like, every time it was like so severe. Every time I sat at my desk, I would just get anxiety to the point where I'd cry about it. And I think that it happens a lot with like female content creators. There's like no boundary line. And even like being as public as I am, I'm very clearly married. I talk about it all the time. Like, my spouse is constantly involved with my content. That doesn't stop people from having some kind of like incredibly like delusional claim to any part of your life. And for the most part, I've been very blessed where, I mean, the people in my community are understanding of the boundaries that I have and the things that I will and won't talk about on stream, and even like my IRL life. But I think especially when you are attached to something like Edmonton Film and Screen, Edmonton Community Meetup, you know where I live. There's nothing that I can do to stop that at this point. People know exactly where I live. So you really lose a lot of that anonymity that you could have if you were not a leader in the kind of area. And that becomes a question of, you know, what can you do to keep yourself safe while also still like lifting the community up so that they don't have to suffer because you are too afraid to be able to, I mean, do the functions of what makes you excellent and makes you a leader in that space. I think that violence within our industry is something that still hasn't been addressed. I mean, we had a massive movement just last year talking about, you know, abuse, like sexual, emotional, and physical abuse within our industry by people who are in the industry, utilizing their platforms to do that. And I think that it's super important that, you know, that conversation continues, because it's a good one to have, even though it's uncomfortable and a little bit stressful.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to transition kind of into our last couple questions before we get into a Q&A. So I'd like to just really quickly go round table for any advice you would give to a woman entering the gaming space. So Madison, we'll start with you.
Sure. Don't be scared. It's not all that. Like we said, these are just some of the extreme examples, right? And you know, you get to do some really cool things. I never imagined I would be talking to some of the people I talked to. I never imagined some of the connections that I've made. And honestly, especially through this pandemic, like there have been incredible Discord groups that have opened up, and I've just been blown away by the stuff that people create. And it's been absolutely a wild ride over the past decade, but to be actually like professionally working in it now and helping people create their content, it is so rewarding. And I think if you want to create content, if you want to help people make their content, if you want to compete, like there are people out here who will support you and they will cheer for you. You just have to find them, and don't be scared to send people messages. There's a lot of people who, even like, I'm intimidated to send some people messages. I was talking with somebody who I was like, I have a like crush on the events that they do, and I was just like, send them a Discord message, and it was like the most exciting thing of my life. So there's a bunch of stuff like that just honestly, it's shaking off the oh, somebody might be mean to me, because somebody might be mean to you anywhere. My first job was Baskin Robbins, and people are mean to you with ice cream. They'll be mean to you anywhere. So just live that life. And if this is what you want to do, just go out and make it happen. Find people who will support you. There's tons and tons of people who offer mentorship on Twitter too. So 100% look there and find somebody who fits with you, right?
Yeah. Kagan, what would you like? One piece of advice that you would give for women entering this space?
Be loud. Doesn't matter if you're a streamer or if you're like myself and you get to spend most of your time in a boardroom. Be loud, be authentic, and be you, because that's where you're going to be able to make the changes and the difference.
Wonderful. Bex?
Mine's kind of twofold. So if you want something, you have to ask for it. I think that you will never get anywhere or get anything if you don't make it known that that's what you want. And that's how I became successful in this space, is I asked for everything that I wanted. And sure, sometimes you're going to hear no, you're going to hear no a hell of a lot. But when you do say yes, that's way more powerful. And I think that by asking and putting yourself out there, you form those connections as well that'll help you like build yourself up. And then on the flip side, when somebody asks you to do something, say yes. If it's within your scope of ability to be able to participate, and you know, if it feels right, like the right thing to do, don't be afraid to say yes to opportunities when they come up. I said to Vic like 3,000 times every time he would message me, I said like, I'll say yes to everything. Just ask me to do it and I'll say yes. Because I think that the whole point and building yourself up to be, you know, an industry leader, putting yourself into a position where you are somebody who other people want to work with is agreeing to work with them on their projects and facilitating a company, or I guess a community that's based on collaboration. And I think that if you want to ask people to do things for you, you need to say yes when they ask you to do things for them. And some of the craziest like stuff I've gotten to do in my entire life was from me saying yes to something that I thought was like not even remotely relevant to like what I actually do, and ended up being like an opportunity that completely changed the trajectory of my career. So just ask, just say yes. And, you know, a good place to find mentors if you're looking for somebody is someone who already gives their time. So I'm sure that any one of these ladies would be happy to help you. I myself, my Twitter DMs are always open. I'm happy to talk to anyone who has questions or wants to figure out how to get into the space. You have to find your cheerleaders, right? And once you find your cheerleaders, it's going to be how you're going to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, so I think just my end for that is that women in this space know how hard it is to be in this space. And so honestly, reaching out to a woman in this space, almost 100% of the time, they will be like, absolutely, here is what I know, here's who I can get you connected with. I was super lucky to get connected through the Women in Gaming International Organization to some of the people who represent Canada in that space. And like, it was literally just a simple thing of just like, hey, shoot this person a message. Okay. And you just take the 30 seconds of courage and you do it, and it will change your life. It can, at least. Yeah. At this point in time, I do really want to see if we have any questions from the chat. So chat, please feel free to ask any questions. We've got about 5 to 7 minutes here to answer that before we finish up the panel. Otherwise, yeah.
You have happy stories too, right?
Yeah, we do have.
There's tons of happy
we have some fantastic happy stories.
Yeah,
I think it's just important to showcase and stuff like in panels like this. It's really important for us to kind of showcase, how difficult and how different it is.
Yeah, I feel like if you look at my Twitter account, you can see like it's not all bad. Like I have a really good time doing what I do. I'm sure that everybody knows that it's a hell of a lot of fun to work in games, but it's important that we also say, you know, it can also be challenging.
Being truthful and authentic, right? I did bring a funny story because I was like, I want to balance out one, but if we have a question, feel free.
We do. So next month is Women's History Month. Are you working on any personal or community projects for the month? That is from Captain Quench. I can say, I guess, a little bit is that everyone that signed up for Salt Flats got the option to sign up for the ASIN newsletter that we are going to be launching. And we will be doing a mini newsletter focusing on women in the gaming industry. And I'm very, very, very excited to bring that forward in terms of content. Any of you ladies got any fun things going on?
Nothing I can talk about yet.
Yeah, that's the fun part where you're like, oh,
like how much am I allowed to say?
There are things happening, I think is what.
I think it's like, I mean, it's so challenging to talk about like anything that's coming up in the space, especially because obviously there's like a whole science to how rollouts happen. So even if it's not on like a physical NDA, it's kind of like, oh, well, the plan is to talk about it at XYZ time. The best thing you could do, though, obviously, is to make sure you follow everybody so that you can see what's coming up. And beyond that, during Women's History Month, it's a great time to make some donations to some charities. One that I love and really respect is Thousand Wishes. I think that they do an awesome job. That's a charity that focuses on women who work in the streaming entertainment space, and they provide them with full gaming setups or grants towards whatever kind of projects that they're doing to help uplift their content creation. I'm not actually like a member of that charity or anything. It's just like I know that they do good work. So, and it's all women focused. So if you have, you know, a couple extra dollars, is a great charity to donate to work on there.
Wonderful. I guess something just really briefly before we wrap up, because I'm not seeing any other questions pop into the chat, where can people reach you guys?
Gonna go first, guys.
Well, I'll jump in first for once on this. You can reach me through LinkedIn, so it's just my name. I do most of my promoting of women and inclusion and diversity through that platform. I'm not as brave as these lovely ladies. I don't get myself on screen as much, but and you feel free to DM me, email me anytime.
Wonderful. Madison, where can people reach you?
So professionally, if you want to ever talk about the Edmonton Screen Industries office or anything that we do there, all of our social media handles are at Edmonton Screen, or you can obviously hit me up on LinkedIn as well. My personal stuff is all Madison R. Cote or Glass Eye Tiger, because who needs a consistent brand? But feel free. I think we're all in the Discord as well, so feel free.
You can reach me pretty much everywhere at Mostly Bex, except for on Twitter, which is mostly with 2 Y's Bex, because someone will not give me my username. And other than that, you can reach me via email if you want to do like a professional collaboration. I respond at bex@edmontontwitch.com. You can also find the Edmonton Twitch community and meetups community through at Edmonton Twitch on all platforms, as well as through our Discord. I'm always available. I really, really urge you, if you are interested on talking about content creation or becoming a collaborator in the space where you would like to put yourself in a leadership position, we do have opportunities that are available, and I do actively search for a balanced team as well. So please reach out to us. We would love to have you join the team.
Wonderful. And then, of course, for myself, I can as well be reached at LinkedIn, just my full name, as well as Spaced Out Blonde, spelt a variety of ways over most social media platforms because branding is irrelevant. I stream 3 nights a week when I can, as well, at Spaced Out Blonde, or just reach out to Asa, EsportsAlberta, on almost every platform. And myself or the 2 gentlemen we have been hyping up all panel, Brad and Vic, are also on there. So just look forward to all of the projects that all 4 of us have going on, as well as feel free to reach out to us if you guys do have any questions. So I guess with that, we're officially at the end of today's panel. I do want to take this time just to personally thank Kagan, Madison, Bex. Thank you guys so much for joining in, for being so open and honest during today's discussion. Some of the big things that I really wanted to just reiterate to everyone. So Madison kind of brought up at the very beginning that the goal, you don't just have to be in game dev in order to be in the gaming space. A lot of us are here to enable people in the gaming space and to enable game development. And that is just as valid and just as cool of an experience to be a part of. So don't think gaming only means game dev. As well, we brought up that you don't, like, as a woman in the space, one of the biggest challenges is that you don't just have to be good enough at gaming. You have to be great or fantastic as a woman. And so I think, especially for our male viewers, don't discount a woman's accomplishment in the space just because you think that there's no way that she could be that good. Don't diss the Toad main, because she will beat you in everything. And then I guess the last thing is just being aware that as a woman in the space, there is a constant pressure on us to feel like there is an expiry date on when we are allowed to be on camera, when we are allowed to face the public, that there is a weight limit or a pretty limit that we feel as women in this space. So with those exciting things in mind, if there is one thing that I'd like for you guys to take from this whole panel, it is this. Women in game leadership exist. You can see the 4 of us right here. We are real people, I promise. and women in leadership deserve the space they take up. So we've each come here today with different backgrounds, different dreams. We're all in different companies, and we all have different career paths ahead of us. What has joined us here is our unity as women leaders in a male-dominated group and in a male-dominated space. And as we continue to have these types of discussions, we all hope to make it easier for those who come in next. So again, if you're interested in this space, we have given all of our handles. It is in the beautiful Salt Flats Guide, physical and digital copies. So please check those out. Send us messages. We would love to talk to you guys about this stuff. With that in mind, I'd love to thank you guys so much for watching the panel today. This has been Women in Leadership. Have a fantastic Sunday. Thank you guys.